I have an obsession with cables. SDI, HDMI, XLR, all the cables. So I've really never paid too much attention to wireless video systems, but the problem with using cables is that they restrict you. They're never long enough and people can trip over them, and until recently, there was not an affordable option out there for low-budget indie filmmakers until Hollyland, they introduced me to this. It's the Mars 300 Pro wireless video system. Now, Hollyland did not sponsor this video, but they did send it to me for free to test out, and I used it on a 3-day music video shoot and I freaking love it. But is it for you? Let's find out. What is it? The Hollyland Mars 300 Pro is an HDMI transmitter and receiver that can send 1080p 60fps video signals as far as 300 feet away from a camera to a monitor with very low latency. It removes the need for running long video cables. Besides just sending from the transmitter to the receiver to connect a couple of production monitors, you can actually also send a real-time feed to 2 or 3 iOS or Google devices over an ad hoc Wi-Fi that the transmitter broadcasts. More on that a little bit later. Now, this specific unit is the 300 Pro enhanced version. Basically, it's similar to the standard, but this one has an external screw-in antennas, which should give stronger signal over to the receiver. Now, I never had any issues with that, and I was super impressed. Now, both models cost close to $450, but right now, there are no other systems that can come close to competing on price and features. The transmitter has a full-size HDMI loop out, which can go to an on-camera monitor like an Atomos Shinobi, which is great because this monitor doesn't have a loop through. Another way that I used it was on a gimbal to loop out to a DJI RS2 RavenEye gimbal to track motion. Essentially, it's just great because you don't end up with a dead end in your signal chain. Now, the receiver has 2 full-size HDMI outputs, so you could send one to a director or a live stream, and then another to a client monitor in Video Village, someplace away from the camera. How does it work? The best thing about the Mars 300 Pro is that it's just easy to use right out of the box. First, you connect the camera HDMI port into the transmitter HDMI input, and you want to set the camera output to 1080p and not 4K. On my Sony FX3, I also had to turn off the control with HDMI and HDMI info display to get a clean output. Next, connect your monitor HDMI input to the receiver's HDMI out. The receiver works well in a light stand set about 5.5 feet high, which is also an ideal viewing height for the monitor. Face the front of the receiver toward the general camera area and keep it away from any large metal structures. And then plug in a battery, flip on the switch on both devices, and they're gonna find each other in just a few seconds and smartly connect using an available wireless frequency. Now, I didn't need to do any channel scanning manually. However, if you want to scan manually, you can. And so here's how you do that. Hollyland suggests manually scanning to use as many as up to 3 wireless systems in the same area, like for a multicam production. You can work with 8 different channels. Press in on the thumb wheel on the receiver and choose Channel Scan. Once it's done scanning, you pick a channel with a solid white background. Image quality and latency. Well, it's not the same as being connected with an SDI or HDMI cable from the source, but unless you tried to record the feed, I don't think you could tell the difference. The wireless quality and latency are that good. It's perfect for both monitoring and live streaming. I like to use it 10 feet away from the main set that had all those bright lights. That way we could perfectly dial in the exposure using false color and check the focus using the monitor's focus peaking features. It's also nice to see the image larger and away from distractions. Now, however, one reason that you might not want to record from the wireless video feed is that it actually only sends whole frame rates like 30 FPS, 60 FPS, not your typical broadcast rates of like 2997 or 5994. The latency is spec'd out at 0.08 seconds, and I didn't notice any perceivable lag on set. There of course is some, but it's very, very minor. The funny thing is that most people never talk about is that every screen has some lag, including your editing reference display back in post-production. People stress over this with wireless video, but the Mars 300 Pro seems to do very good with this potential issue. I've seen many people do distance tests, but since the results can vary so much, let me just tell you that for 3 days of real-world shooting, we never had an issue as long as I remember to put on the antennas on top of the transmitter. Battery life and power options. To power the Mars 300 Pro, you're gonna need 2 Sony L-series batteries. Those are the MPF style you probably already have laying around. I had some, but my monitor was using them, so I ordered a couple more. The MPF 550 size works great, and it doesn't make the whole package too big or heavy. I use REV Power batteries. They have 2900 milliamp hours, and they ran from full to flashing in 4.5 hours. They were dead in 5. You're not gonna get that Apple M1 MacBook Pro type of battery life, but it's sufficient. You could also run a USB-C type cable. They provide one of those. You could run it over to like a power bank for more extended power, or you could run a dummy battery, but both of those options, they force you to manage a cable, and the whole point of this thing is to use fewer cables, right? The screen shows battery power in volts, and once it gets to 6.8 volts and flashing, it's time to swap it out for a freshly charged battery. When to use it. I use this on a small music video shoot to help get extra eyes on the camera, like a traditional video village or a director's monitor would be set up. It can be super handy anytime you're filming in a small space like a bathroom or a car and you need to get more eyes on the scene. But a few other clever ways that you could use the system is if you're doing like a walk and talk and show during a live stream. If you're a photographer, you could connect this to a tethered computer and display the photos as you shoot them to a lobby or client area on a big TV. Or if you're producing an event with a live, large audience, you could use this for what they call iMag. It's basically image magnification, like a Jumbotron screen at a ball game, but on a smaller scale, of course. Hey, super quick, if you made it this far, I wanna say welcome if this is your first time to Creative Video Tips. I'm Chadwick, and this channel is all about helping you craft stories that make a difference and stand out. So if you're into that, subscribe right now with the bell. That way you don't miss out on future tips and reviews. Also, I wanna give a huge thank you to everyone that subscribed lately. The channel just crossed 10,000 incredibly talented creatives like you, and that just blows my mind. Now next up, let's check out the app. HollyView App. Everything seems to have an app these days, but some are better than others. And I gotta tell you, the HollyView app, which works on both iOS and Android, it's one of the better ones for sure. It's not like that imaging app from Sony. It works over Wi-Fi directly from the transmitter. So after you download the app and you connect it to your phone or iPad Wi-Fi settings, you connect to a network called HLD ... and the password's 1 through 8. You gotta also make sure you turn off your cellular. If you don't turn off cellular, it's not gonna work. I know this stinks, but you gotta do it. Now, open the app and connect. It works like any other production monitor, but it actually has less latency. The app has tools like waveforms, histograms, focus peaking, zebras, frame guides, and a punched-in view to check focus, false color, which is one of my favorite tools ever, and a preview LUT to see log footage even better. You can even grab a photo or video clip so that you have a reference frame right there on your phone or device, and you can send that out. The gotchas, the cons. By now, I bet you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this new filmmaking production tool, but here are my cons. The HollyView app, it needs to have cellular turned off, and it takes over your Wi-Fi, so you're pretty much off the grid when you use it, unless you use a secondary iPad or an old iPhone that you don't actually use as a phone anymore. The director at our last shoot, he forgot to turn the cellular back on afterward, and he never got a call or text for hours later. Maybe that's not a con. The next thing to watch out for is with the Canon C200 and switching from playback mode to record mode. We would sometimes lose the signal out of the HDMI of the camera, and I think this is specific to the camera though, because this didn't happen to the R5, the FX3, or the Blackmagic Pocket camera. And once it rebooted, we got a 1080p 60 signal out of the HDMI port. The good thing is that you can actually see on the transmitter itself, on that little tiny OLED screen that's on there, if it has a signal or not. Another thing to point out is that the battery status on here thinks that everyone is an electrical engineer, and it gives you a volt reading instead of a percentage of how much time is left. You gotta learn to swap batteries at 6.8 volts, but this is confusing if you don't read the manual or watch this video. You'll also need to buy more accessories that I wish were part of the package. There's no batteries included, so plan to spend another $35 for NPF batteries. There's no case, but I found an old Pelican 1120 that seems to fit nicely. No HDMI cables that come in the box, so I linked to some that I like from Monoprice and Condor Blue if you like coiled cables, like this Gerald Undone one. And then of course you're gonna need more 1/4 mounting screw options to attach these to your production monitor. A good way to go is probably small rig. This isn't a small rig one, but they have them that are pretty expensive, like a Magic Arm. And inside the box, they give you one cold shoe to 1/4, and that could go on the camera, and then one expansion accessory. That's what they call this thing right here. It could go on either the transmitter or the receiver, and it lets you put the device horizontally. So if you're in a tight space. I found these screws on here though to come loose after a couple hours of filmmaking. Hey, if you found this video helpful at all, please make sure to give it a like so that other people can see it too. And if you wanna find out more about the Hollyland Mars 300 Pro, there's a link in the description, and there's also a video on screen right now that YouTube thinks that you might be interested in. And because there's so much more to learn, I'll see you in the next video.